Hello and welcome to Money, Me and COVID-19, where we meet subject matter experts to talk about the economic, the business, the financial and the social impact of coronavirus. My guest today is steeped in the property sector. He spent 4 decades involved in buying and selling properties, property development, property management. He's now an author and a mentor to budding property developers. His name is John Howard. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me on again.
Yeah, indeed. Now, you were smart enough to see the 2008 crash coming and to position your portfolio to minimize its impact. I guess,
Yes.
like the rest of us, COVID-19 has come as a bit of a curve ball out of left field. How's it impacting your world, John?
Yeah, it has come as a bit of a curveball. I mean, it's all about timing. You know, isn't business about timing and making those right decisions at the right time? And fortunately for us, my big development in Ipswich is completed, and we've sold quite a few of them now. And also, we're funded by the UK government. So they can hardly charge us any interest. So that's good. With our estate agency businesses, we've done what everyone else has done. You know, we furloughed everyone, and it's coming out of this situation that's going to be more challenging than actually now, Graham. I think, because certainly with estate agencies, they say if you don't sell any property for 3 months, you'll go bust. So we need 6 months really to get back into profit. And that's a challenge, not just for us, but obviously other companies as well. We're fortunate that we are in a position where we've got cash and we can get through that situation, but many, many won't. And I think more people and more companies, sadly, will go bust coming out of this than they will at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's be honest, these are unprecedented measures that have effectively switched off the economy and then taken on, a huge spending commitments to try and address that. So what do you see as the longer term, bigger picture economic impact of this? Is this a recession? Is it a depression? What's it going to take to get over this?
Well, if you talk to my business partner who wants to retire, and was going to retire this year, we were selling a few assets and reducing our borrowings and so on. His email shortly after we got closed down, if you like, was, "This isn't going to be a recession. This is going to be a depression!" ! And underneath it, there goes my retirement. Now he's an accountant and he doesn't like crossing the road, Graham. So because he thinks it's dangerous. So we have to take that into account and we have to be positive. But he may have a point, of course, because if it goes on too long and we lose more and more jobs and those jobs don't come back, then it could well become a depression, presumably. But you're far more experienced on that side of things, Graham, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that. For me, my view is if we get out of this within the next 8 weeks and get some sort of businesses going again, and I know we won't be going to the pub and the restaurants and so on, I know that won't happen for a while, but if we can just get out and get some business done, especially in the property world, because property and housing is so important to the UK economy. You know, when you think that every time someone buys a house, they put in new carpets, might do a kitchen, a bathroom, a roof, heating. It's so important to the UK economy. I cannot believe the government can keep us locked down for more than 6 to 8 weeks, because if they do, I think things will get much, much worse. I think at the moment, domestic property market, if we come back that quickly, I think most of the sales we've got on the go at the moment, certainly with our estate agencies and our development side, I think we can hold those together, as it were. But any longer than that, I think it'll be difficult.
No, absolutely. And I mean, technically, a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth. A depression is a 10% reduction in GDP. And I think quite a few respected bodies are predicting that kind of drop. But I think to me, I almost liken it to a building site. You send in the wrecking balls and they can demolish what's there in a matter of a few weeks. Yeah. Rebuilding the whole thing is what takes years. So I can't see this being a sort of a V-shaped recovery. It feels to me like there'll be so much destroyed in the sort of 2 or 3 month lockdown, that it would be I would have thought a multi-year recovery that could have quite a big impact on the economy and on jobs.
Very interesting. A lot of people are saying there could be hope. That I think they're hoping the V situation, and of course, from my point of view, that would be great from our businesses. But we're strong enough to survive. I think what a recession or whatever you want to call it does do. Any business that was weak anyway and was likely to goes, doesn't it, straight away. And it puts them out of their misery almost, really. And what's left is quite an exciting, vibrant time. And I've been more successful and earned more money coming out of recession, which I think I said to you last time I was on, than at any other time. It's a very exciting time as long as you've got some cash. And fortunately for me, Graham, on Saturday morning I received a loan offer from a new bank in Mayfair that I'm using. And I very quickly signed it, understandably, and whacked it back in the post to them, because that will give me, I'm borrowing the money at 3%, which is great now, and that will give me, some ammo, if you like, to get out there when the time is right. And it's not now, but when the time is right, along with my other backers and so on, to hopefully do some damage, as it were.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly one of the projects I'm involved in, I've just been told a blanket 3-month delay on any new funding. Yes. There's somewhat of an inconsistency in terms of live development sites. Some are being shut down, some seem to be finding a way of staying open. So I think the impact is going to vary from project to project. But what do you see the overall impact being on residential property prices for the rest of it?
Well, of course, you could say I'm a little bit biased because I've got £35 million worth of property to sell this year. Well, it was 35. It was 40 at the start of the year. We've done quite well so far. What I would say is if we come back quite quickly, I think the domestic market will hold up. And the reason I say that is because this is the right time of year. People have been sat at home, families together for, normally only happens at Christmas. They've been sat together looking at all the property portals, persuading mum and dad it's time to move, perhaps. So I think there will be an inbuilt enthusiasm getting back, into the swing of things. I'm hoping. After that, of course, initial enthusiasm, we're back, we're buying, that may then dip. I'm not saying it's not going to, but domestically, we might be okay as long as people can keep their jobs. With regards to development, totally different scenario. And a lot of, especially with the bridges, the people bridging money at 15, 20%, they're borrowing 70, 80%. If that, that those properties will be revalued down because they're not finished, or they're, whatever the situation might be, they can't pay their interest or so on. And I think that's where the initial damage will be. In certainly part finished projects. I've already been offered 2 this week, part finished projects where the guys just need to get out already. For me, it's much too early. Never catch a falling knife, Graham. Let's see what happens. If it is a V and you're wrong and I'm wrong on that, the V, then I won't have lost any money. I just won't have made as much as I could have done, which I'd be quite happy with. And as you get older, of course, as we know, Graham, we all become more cautious, don't we?
I have no idea what you mean. But I mean, let's face it, after the 2008 crash, a lot of property developers did go out of business. So do you imagine we'll see the same again this time?
I don't think it will be quite the same, but I think that there will be, of course. And the ones who are vulnerable anyway, because they borrowed too much money and all the rest of it, they will probably go to the wall, won't they? But the ones that are stable and are borrowing at 60% or something like that, I know the banks on the whole can say, right, the market's dropped. Unless you're going to put in another 15% cash into this project, we're not going to do it. There'll be all that silly business going on from the banks. And I think the banks, I know relatively probably they've all been stress tested. and probably in a better position than a lot of European banks, the British banks. But when it comes to it, in my view, in my experience, they only look after themselves. Whatever the government might say to them, I know the government have spoken to all the banks and said, you must be sympathetic to people and give them, interest, time to pay the interest and so on. But I can tell you now, Graham, the banks we deal with are not doing that.
No, indeed. And in fact, the chancellors had to step in and more or less tell them that they can't keep asking for 100% personal guarantees on a loan that's supposed to be 80% guaranteed by the government. So yeah, I totally take your point there. Now, in recent years, you've started kind of sharing your experience and expertise as a mentor. What kind of advice are you giving to your kind of mentees, if I can use that word, during this period?
Well, it's very interesting. The ones I'm working with basically don't catch a falling knife. I mean, if something's incredibly cheap and the guys just need to sell it and you're going to rent it out and the yield ends up at 11, 12% rather than what you were thinking of 6 or 7, then clearly it's a bit of a no-brainer. I'm not suggesting don't buy the smaller things that are properties that look very cheap, but please don't start any dramatic developments. And I've got 1 or 2 people I'm working with who've got 5-10 million pounds to invest, and they contact me and say, John, can we do it? Shall we go? I go, whoa, just calm down a bit. You've got a long way to go before you're spending that money. So it's very interesting. I am actually just starting a high net worth, a property fund for high net worth individuals with someone else who I've known for many years. And again, that will take time to get organised, but I'm organising it now in readiness for probably 6, 9, 12 months ahead.
Okay. Now, I know you're also very active in political life. Now, we all thought we dodged a bullet with Jeremy Corbyn's spending plans, and here
Yes,
we have a conservative government that's spending trillions. What's your view on the way the government has reacted to this and what that means for the British economy in the longer term?
Well, I'm not an economist, and I'm probably not the best person to ask that question, Graham, but thank you for asking it me. What I would say is that the government have done as much as possible, probably, and at the end of the day, they sound more like a Labour government, I appreciate, than they do a Conservative one at the moment. I'm disappointed for Boris because he had such great plans for this country and was driving things forward. And of course, I cannot see how those plans can be carried on with at the moment, because surely we've got to tighten our belts. We're all going to be paying more interest, more tax, aren't we, Graham, going forward? I mean, how on earth are we going to pay back this debt we're building up? I mean, huge build-up of debt. I know they're printing more money, and of course that can cause inflation, which normally for property people is not a bad thing sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. I think what people often forget when they see these spending commitments and they see the Bank of England doing, buying bonds and things, a bond is a claim on future tax income from the government. So
yes,
the more bonds get issued, the more tax has got to be down the line. So get ready for that, guys. But I think talking of tax, one of the groups of people who've been really hit by tax changes in recent years, of course, are private landlords. And now they face this new challenge where potentially their tenants are losing their jobs or income is declining, but the government's saying you can't change these tenants in these circumstances. So how do you see all this impacting the poor buy-to-let landlord?
Well, Graham, what I would say is that actually I thought we would lose. We've got a reasonable sized residential portfolio and some commercial. And I thought, we estimated straight away that we would lose 25% of our income from our residential tenants. The truth so far has been a lot less than that. So that's quite encouraging. Despite the government doing their best to tell everyone they haven't got to pay, the majority have paid. And I think if you're on a buy-to-let mortgage, you could argue, Graham, one, the bank can't take it off you for 25 years, unlike any other borrowings. The second thing is as long as you can keep your tenants, you can probably suffer a small loss in valuation. If you've got shares, property shares, sorry, if you've got shares on the stock market, that's going to be far more vulnerable than having a buy-to-let mortgage, in my view. And if you're looking at the long term over 5, 10, probably 10, 15 years, actually, it probably doesn't matter to you that much compared to a developer with empty stock or part finished stock and so on. With regards to commercial, I've got a rule I brought out for myself with commercial shops and commercial tenants I've got. And this rule is this: if they're smaller than I am financially, then I'm happy to support and help them through this difficult period. If, though, they are bigger than me, and I've got a number of national tenants who have decided it's a good idea not to pay me whatsoever, in some cases they've already said they want 6 months rent-free, not deferred, rent-free. I'm telling them, no, you're not having it. You've had support from the government, you've had rates taken off and everything else. You pay me because I'm smaller than you. Now, it's a tough stance to take, and ultimately I can walk in after 21 days, Graham, as you know, on a commercial lease and take it back. Have I got the balls to do that? They'll have to wait and see.
Okay. But it's interesting that you talk about the commercial property there, because one of the things that's obviously happened by force here is that we're all spending time at home, and people starting to realize that 3 hours a day commuting in a crowded train to a city centre to all be in one place is maybe not that smart. Do you potentially see a change in people's kind of life work pattern coming, and that maybe we'll not see such a demand for town centre offices in the future?
I think, Graham, we are at a real junction, and you can see. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day who told me that one of the very big insurance companies is thinking of allowing 2,500 workers they've got to carry on working from home when all this is over. Now, I'm not saying they won't go in once a week to meet everyone. I'm sure they will, but that's astonishing. And if that continues, that thinking continues amongst all these big employees, and of course it's great for the environment, Graham. I mean, if they're not traveling backwards and forwards, it's great for them. They're saving money. And these days, of course, all this software is so sophisticated, they can work out whether the people are working hard or not, and whether they're doing their job, which of course was never the case years ago. So I can see these big office blocks in London, central London, and other places. I can see them coming up to be converted residentially, because these landlords can't afford to have them empty for too long. The rates on these buildings are huge. And don't forget, it's very, very sad for us landlords and investors. We don't get any rate relief whatsoever. The tenants do, but we do not on shops or so on, unless, of course, it's a listed building, in which case there's no rates.
No, indeed, and I think as investors, be careful, because a lot of those kind of big city centre commercial office buildings are owned by pension funds who rely Absolutely. On the rent for paying out the pension. So there's a concern there. But equally, there could be some actual office to resi conversion opportunities coming out of the other side of this.
They could, but of course the banks are only going to lend 60% on these. Maximum, I think. I mean, a number of banks that we both know have stopped lending at the moment. It's only a short-term thing till they sort themselves out. But I know some of them have been lending to people that I wouldn't lend to.
Right.
So, I'm a little bit wary of one or two of them. But we'll see what happens. And of course, the auctions have been very interesting in the last few days, because now suddenly they've all gone online. They're saving themselves an absolute fortune, not having to rent somewhere. Interestingly, when the auctioneers say they've sold 70% and it's wonderful, it's still okay. If you add up, there's one the other day, 165 lots. They sold 64 lots. Now, to me, that's not 70%. I'm not good at maths, Graham. You're much better than me. But I think that's about 35%. And the reason they get away with it is because any property that is withdrawn from the market and doesn't get a bid, they don't count in their figures. So the only properties that have really been selling at the auction, commercial auctions, are convenience stores, funeral directors, investment, things that properties like that, and they have been selling relatively well still on yields of 7-8% probably, that type of thing. Anything empty, anything with a dodgy looking tenant, short lease, forget it. No one's buying anything, and rightly so. Why would you?
Yeah, indeed. And also, one of the problems is they can't send valuers out to premises, so you can't get valuations done to get finance.
No, so I mean, at 60% odd, some of these banks will do it on desktop valuation, and so they should. I mean, at the end of the day, and that's the other thing, Graham. Will this change the way valuers value property? In as much that if you're only borrowing 60%, what the hell are they doing going to value it in the first place? As long as the property exists, and someone's only borrowing 60% and putting 40% cash down, surely to God they don't need to come out and value it anyway. Not with all the sophistication they've got now with whatever it's called, Zoom or not Zoom. What's it called when they street scene and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
That it's changing, Graham. I think in front of our very eyes.
I think we will look back on this as a kind of an inflection point in that use of that technology. So on that topic, and coming towards the end of our time together, John, any advice you can give for how we can all kind of work from home during the lockdown and still, maintain our sanity?
It's been a very testing time for me, Graham, because you know me quite well, and I'm very active. I'm all over the place looking at property, doing things. And I'm not the most technical person. In fact, my wife would say I'm the worst technical person in the world on computers and so on. But I've learned how to use Zoom. I've learned how to do all these other things. And actually, I've got my 3 seminars next. Well, they're called. I mustn't call them seminars. I've got to call them webinars now, apparently, because I'm going to do them on Zoom. So even a dinosaur like me is changing and adapting and learning how to still earn a living in these difficult times.
I just wonder whether it'll be boom time for divorce lawyers after this is all over.
Goodness me, there certainly will be. I have a rule. I try not to talk to my wife all day.
Excellent stuff. Well, John Howard, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, Graham, as always.